evening wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News Roundup, dateline 13th of January 2024. This week's headlines. Deceased megachurch leader T.B. Joshua raped and tortured worshippers. T.B. Joshua is also exposed as having covered up a fatal Lagos building collapse. Young Britons are exposed to online radicalisation following the Hamas attack. An Indian bus driver was nearly beheaded in a blasphemy attack. Filipino Catholics pray for Middle East peace in a massive procession venerating a black statue of Jesus. The disgraced ex-Post Office boss was shortlisted to be Bishop of London. Anti-choice Christians in Parliament launch a triple attack on abortion rights. Faith schools admit fewer disadvantaged pupils than other schools. And a high-ranking Vatican official says priests should be allowed to marry. Evidence of widespread abuse and torture by the founder of one of the world's biggest Christian evangelical churches has been uncovered by the BBC. Dozens of ex-Synagogue Church of All Nations members, 5 of them British, allege atrocities, including rape and forced abortions by Nigeria's late T.B. Joshua. The allegations of abuse in a secretive Lagos compound span almost 20 years. T.B. Joshua, who died in 2021, was a charismatic and hugely successful preacher and televangelist who had an immense global following. The BBC's findings over a 2-year investigation include dozens of eyewitness accounts of physical violence or torture carried out by Joshua, including instances of child abuse and people being whipped and chained. Numerous women who say they were sexually assaulted by Joshua, with a number claiming they were repeatedly raped for years inside the compound. Multiple allegations of forced abortions inside the church following the alleged rapes by Joshua, including one woman who says she had 5 terminations. Multiple first-hand accounts detailing how Joshua faked his miracle healings, which were broadcast to millions of people around the world. One of the victims, a British woman called Ray, was 21 years old when she abandoned her degree at Brighton University in 2002 and was recruited into the church. She spent the next 12 years as one of Joshua's so-called disciples inside his maze-like concrete compound in Lagos. We all thought we were in heaven, but we were in hell, and in hell, terrible things happened, she told the BBC. Ray says she was sexually assaulted by Joshua and subjected to a form of solitary confinement for 2 years. The abuse was so severe, she says she attempted suicide multiple times. The BBC has also unearthed new evidence that the late Nigerian megachurch leader T.B. Joshua hid dead bodies and intimidated families to cover up his role in the collapse of a building which killed at least 116 people at his church in 2014. The collapse is one of the worst disasters to ever strike a place of worship in Africa. 2 days after the collapse, on the 12th of September 2014, T.B. Joshua publicly said it was linked to an aircraft that flew over the building which was used to house visiting pilgrims. But an inquiry by a Lagos coroner agreed with emergency workers that structural failure had caused the guest house to collapse and said it had been built without proper planning permission. Eyewitnesses told the BBC that TB Joshua had been warned of serious structural problems prior to the disaster. They say the aeroplane explanation was a lie. He knew the building was unstable, says Emmanuel. He described the pastor receiving a report hours before the collapse that the building was swaying and shaking. Multiple witnesses say the visitors were not warned. Instead, more than 200 of them were led into the building's dining room on the ground floor to eat their lunch, when all 6 stories of concrete descended on top of them. Many were killed instantly, but more than 100 were trapped inside, alive. It was quite clear that the building was never designed for the height that TB Joshua built it to, says Ray from the UK, who spent 12 years living in the church as a disciple. She says she was present when TB Joshua ordered his workers to construct additional floors. The foundations weren't built to hold a building of that many stories. He just kept kind of pushing and saying, "I want it higher. It must go higher. It must go higher." There is a BBC video series on TB Joshua available on iPlayer if you can get it. If you have been affected by any of these issues, you can email haveyoursay@bbc.co.uk. There has been an unprecedented 12-fold increase in hateful social media content being referred to specialist police officers since Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, according to the UK's Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit. The team says it has received more than 2,700 referrals from the public, shared via an online form, since Hamas attacked Israel and Israel launched waves of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip in return. Officers said they are being referred to mainly anti-Semitic content being posted and shared by young Britons who have not been on their radar before. They described a real intensification in hate, especially from youngsters behaving in what they describe as a reckless way online. Matt Dukes, head of counter-terror policing, fears that, while his team is tasked with tackling the most extreme content, there is a failure by social media companies to deal with the overall climate of hate created by their algorithms. An Indian bus driver was nearly beheaded in a blasphemy attack. See this video.
In a shocking incident in Uttar Pradesh, India, 20-year-old engineering student Lareb Hashmi was arrested after attacking a bus conductor with a cleaver, claiming the act was in response to alleged blasphemy. The confrontation occurred on November 24th when Hashmi, infuriated over a ticket fare, assaulted 24-year-old conductor Harikesh Vishwakarma, inflicting severe injuries, including to the neck, when Hashmi attempted to flee, leading to a police encounter where he was shot in the leg and arrested. In a self-recorded video, Hashmi confessed to the crime, stating his motive was to punish Vishwakarma for quote-unquote insulting the Prophet Muhammad. This violent episode has raised concerns about the dangerous intersections of religious sentiments and public safety in India.
On Tuesday, a massive crowd of mostly barefoot Catholic worshippers marched in a procession in Manila, the Philippines' capital, that paraded a centuries-old black statue of Jesus. Considered to be a major annual Catholic event in Asia, the procession was cancelled during the coronavirus pandemic, and last year, after pandemic restrictions were eased, the statue was not paraded to discourage large crowds. The procession took 15 hours, and the crowd of devotees at one point swelled to more than 2 million, according to a police estimate. The police were already on high alert during the event in Manila's Quiapo district, following a December the 3rd bombing that killed 4 people and wounded dozens of Catholic worshippers attending Mass at a university in the southern Philippines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. blamed foreign terrorists for the attack, which sparked a security alarm. Ex-Post Office boss, the Reverend Paula Venables, who is an ordained Anglican priest, was interviewed for the role of Bishop of London, the third most senior in the Church of England, but was not appointed from a final shortlist of 3. The Archbishop of Canterbury pushed her application. This news comes as Mrs. Venables said she would return her CBE amid the fallout of the Horizon scandal. She ran the post office when it routinely denied there was a problem with its Horizon IT system. More than 700 post office sub-branch managers were prosecuted based on information from the faulty software which made it look like there was money missing from their accounts. Some went to prison following convictions for false accounting and theft, while many were financially ruined, and some took their lives. Anti-choice groups, pro-life groups, have expressed delight at the introduction of 3 new bills in the House of Lords that would potentially restrict women's ability to have legal abortions in the United Kingdom. The UK government has been slow to act on abortion rights generally. Twice it has lost to majorities in Parliament that overruled ministers, first in a motion to keep telemedical home abortion provisions that were introduced during the pandemic, and then again to pass legislation on safe access zones outside abortion clinics. There were also worrying signs that the police are increasingly using outdated 1861 Victorian criminal laws on abortion that are still in effect in Great Britain to investigate women who have had miscarriages or who are suspected of having terminations outside the narrow framework of the 1967 Abortion Act. In the last 12 months alone, 7 women have faced prosecution and trial under the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act. This is an unprecedented increase, which compares to just 3 convictions between 1862 and 2022. Faith schools are consistently more socially selective than schools without a religious character, a new report by the Sutton Trust has found. Faith schools admit fewer students eligible for free school meals than would be expected given their catchment areas. This trend is especially pronounced among the top-performing faith schools. Shockingly, 19 of the 20 most socially selective schools in England have a religious character. Catholic schools were the least representative of the population and the least likely to cater to disadvantaged children in their catchment areas. Humanist UK said the study provides yet more evidence that faith-based admissions are bad for society. Maltese Archbishop Charles Scicluna, a papal ally and an influential prelate at the Vatican, said in an interview published on Sunday, January the 7th, that the Catholic Church should reconsider its ban on married priests. If it was up to me, I would revise the requirement that priests have to be celibate, Scicluna told the Times of Malta. Experience has shown me that this is something we need to seriously think about, he added, stating that he has spoken openly on the subject at the Vatican. But the decision doesn't depend on me, he said. Scicluna occupies an influential role at the Vatican as adjunct secretary to the Holy See's Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. Under the leadership of the newly appointed prefect, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, the Vatican's doctrinal department has allowed for trans people to be baptized and to act as godparents, and has recently greenlit the blessing of gay and irregular customs if performed in a way that cannot be confused with marriage. Priestly celibacy is not considered to be an official doctrine of the Church, meaning a pope could overturn the rule. According to Scicluna, the decision on married priests should not be motivated solely by the recruitment crisis plaguing the Catholic Church in some areas. Becoming a priest should be a question of faith, he said in the interview, and rules should not be changed just to try to solve a lack of priests. But why should we lose a young man who would have made a fine priest just because he wanted to get married? And we did lose good priests just because they chose marriage, he said. Shortly on this channel you can watch Tercia and I chat with guest Apiaje Danka, who is a humanist and live streaming YouTuber who wants the world to be at peace. He is joining us from Kumasi, Ghana. Come and join in my text. And don't forget to watch Views on the News, the show where our opinionated panel give their views on the items I've just reported on. This show has been Global Atheist News. Please like, subscribe and share. Thank you for watching.